The time is now for the Tackle Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I'm in my 8th year working alongside Bob to originate our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I am joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Tan. Yeah, we are recording this on Thanksgiving before we stuff ourselves with food. So I am very thankful for football. And we're actually releasing this on Friday, right before the Chiefs game. And we released a strong opinion on Chiefs minus 12. So something to check your books, see if that line's still there. But let's jump into our first segment here, which is the free bet of the week. And we are 14-6-1 dating back to last year. But what do you have for us this week, Tan?
This week, we're going to do we're going to do a strong opinion on Washington minus 5.5. And I wanted to circle back to what you said. We did do that Chiefs strong opinion, and people can play that up to 13 if it's still at 13 when you're watching this podcast. If you happen to watch in the first 2 hours, it gets released before kickoff. But back to this game. We're going to take Washington minus 5.5. It's good to minus 6 here. And it's really just a play on Jaden Daniels looks healthy now after kind of sputtering there with the rib injury. He had 16 more rushing yards last week than he did in the 3 previous games combined. And he might have to scramble a little bit this week because right tackle Andrew Wiley could miss this game. But I'm not too worried about it in this matchup because, the Titans' most dangerous guy on the defensive line is Jeffrey Simmons, who's 15th in pressures, and he's going to be lining up across from Washington's best offensive lineman who will be on the field, right guard Sam Cosmi, who ranks 12th in pass blocking efficiency.
Yeah, and it looks like the Titans are going to be missing a couple pieces in the secondary. I mean, Snead has been out for a while, and safety Quandre Diggs is sidelined as well right now.
Right. So I think Daniels can attack deep here, right? Get that downfield game to Terry McLaurin going, who has 20 targets of 20-plus air yards this season, 4th in the NFL. And with Snead out, and Snead, he wasn't playing that well for the Titans anyways, but his backup, Jarvis Brownlee, certainly hasn't been playing well, surrendering 1.56 yards per cover snap, 8th worst in the entire NFL. So I think whenever Daniels sees McLaurin lined up across from Brownlee, they are going to try and hit some of those go balls. And, especially because the ground game's not really going to be working for the Commanders. They're going to have to air it out here because the Titans rank 5th in EPA per rush allowed.
All right, well, looking at the Titans offense, how do they match up here against the Commanders?
Well, that's kind of why, I was looking at this game and I'm like, should we play over because we like the matchup for the Commanders offense, or should we just take the side? And looking at it, I don't love the Titans offensive matchup here, particularly because the Commanders have the 2nd highest cover 1 rate in the NFL. And it looks like they could be getting back Marshawn Lattimore, which would be huge for this cover 1 defense. And Tennessee has struggled against cover 1 this season, averaging 83% of their yards per pass play against other coverages, which is 26 relatively in the NFL. And then I think the Commanders had the horses up front to give Tennessee's terrible offensive line some trouble. And Will Levis, if he's under fire, they want to negate that by trying to hit the Commanders with some screens. But that's a place the Commanders' defense has been pretty good this year, 9th in EPA per target allowed to opposing running backs. So we think this number should be closer to 7, maybe not a true 7, but I think it might be a true 6.8 here. So I certainly like the Commanders minus 5.5.
I love it. Well, let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got stock up, stock down, and whose stock are you going to be buying this week?
I am buying Matthew Stafford's protection. So we've seen 2 different Rams offenses this year, and it's basically if Stafford has, over 2.5 seconds, he's been dicing teams up. But last week, in that Eagles game, Warren McClendon at right tackle got destroyed basically every true passing set, and it destroyed this Rams offense. They still ended up scoring 20, but they got there in garbage time. And with Rob Havenstein, who's been out, their starting right tackle, the Rams have converted a league-low 20% of third downs over the past 4 weeks. Good news, though, for Matthew Stafford's protection and why I'm buying it this week in stock up is Havenstein should be back and Alaric Jackson should be back. And the Rams have only had a couple of games with both starting tackles healthy this season. And so I think that's going to be huge in limiting Carl Granderson and Chase Young on the edge for New Orleans.
Yeah, that Rams offense is really scary when they're healthy, but whose stock are you going to be selling this week?
All right, I was buying Matthew Stafford's protection, but I am selling Anthony Richardson's protection because it's a disaster up front there for the Colts. Backup right guard Dalton Tucker ranks last in pass blocking efficiency out of 60 qualifying guards, and they might switch to 32-year-old Mark Lewinsky, who joined the Colts last week. They picked him up off the street. He hasn't been on an NFL team since March, but he might be a better option than Dalton Tucker. We'll see what Steichen decides to end up doing there. And then at center, next to the right guard, Ryan Kelly is out, and backup Tanner Bortolini is in concussion protocol. So it's going to be probably third string Danny Pinter getting his first start since September 2022. Oh. I mean, that is an absolute disaster across from New England interior defender Christian Barmore, who got a sack last week. We talked about how he could make a difference for this Patriots defense. He was 14th in pressures last year, but he missed the first 10 games of the season with blood clots. So I think Barmore can completely destroy this game for the Colts up front.
Yeah, and to add to your point, Richardson is the worst in the NFL with a 30% clean pocket rate, and I don't think that's going to get much better on Sunday.
No. Yeah. And, the Patriots, fourth highest blitz rate in the league. The Colts have struggled against blitzes all season, and Richardson has a league high 4.8% turnover worthy play rate. So I'm expecting at least one interception, maybe two against the Patriots on Sunday.
All right, well, let's switch it over to our next segment here. We've got the injury watch, and Philadelphia looks like they are going to be without some key players on both sides of the ball here.
Yeah, it looks like Devonta Smith is going to need another week with that hamstring injury, and he's 18th in EPA per target. That's going to be tough for Philly's offense because it means that the Ravens can pretty much double team A.J. Brown and make the Eagles beat them somewhere else. And then on the defensive side of the ball for Philly, Darius Slay, 13th in yards per cover snap allowed, ruled out in the third quarter last week with a concussion, probably out here. And so that's going to be backup cornerback Isaiah Rodgers. And I think Lamar Jackson can attack him with Rashad Bateman, who's had a great year. He's 5th in EPA per target this year. The Ravens talked about him in the offseason. Now they were going to get him more involved in the offense, and Rashad Bateman has rewarded them. So I think Bateman can have a pretty good game here across from Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah, depending on which Eagles fan you talk to, they might be happy about Slay being out. They don't really like him sometimes.
He's 13th in yards per cover snap allowed. They just like to complain.
Oh, yes, they do. But let's shift it over to the Jaguars, and it looks like they should be getting back Trevor Lawrence, but this might be a very scary matchup for him.
Oh, yeah, I hate this matchup for Trevor Lawrence in his first game back here. If I was Trevor Lawrence, I'd sit one more out because, remember the Jaguars traded away their starting left tackle, Cam Robinson, so it's going to be their backup left tackle, Walker Little, across from Will Anderson, who's 5th in sacks this season. And then Jaguars, Evan Ingram, has been heavily featured in this offense, and the Jaguars tight ends have the 5th highest target share in the NFL, but Houston's defense is conceding a league low 38% success rate to opposing tight ends. So I don't think Ingram's going to have a pretty good game here. And then where else would Trevor Lawrence go with the ball? Probably Brian Thomas, but he's going to be lined up across from Derek Stingley, who's 3rd in yards per cover snap allowed. The Jaguars have struggled mightily against cover 4 this season, and Houston's has the 2nd highest cover 4 rate in the NFL. D'Amico coming over from that San Francisco system, they run so much cover 4 in those defenses. So I think it's a really, really bad matchup for Trevor Lawrence, who's not going to be able to hit Brian Thomas deep, and Evan Ingram should be taken away.
All right, well, looking at the 49ers, they are in a massive game here versus the Bills, but they have just been crushed by injuries this year, and I think we need some status updates on some of these guys so we can kind of get a better feel.
We're going to have to monitor it. I haven't even posted the write-up yet because it's like we got some big players. Some of the best non-quarterbacks in the NFL are questionable here. Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, and then you do have the quarterback who's questionable himself. I think Purdy's probably trending towards not starting. Certainly the market is tilting that direction. And then on the other side of the ball, the Bills might be getting back Matt Milano. That would be huge if Matt Milano could come back this week because the Bills are 30th in yards per rush allowed. So Milano can shore up that. And Milano is one of the better cover cornerbacks in the NFL too. So that'd be huge for the Bills defense. And on the Bills offense, we got to monitor Dalton Kincaid, who's 7th in yards per route run among tight ends.
Well, looking at the Bengals, it looks like help is on the way for Joe Burrow as Cincinnati offensive line will be getting back Orlando Brown, who ranks ninth in pass blocking efficiency. So that should be huge for them. But looking at the Saints, they've won two straight, but this could be setting up for a long night for Derek Carr.
It's looking like left guard Lucas Patrick and center Eric McCoy are going to be out. And so that is going to be a huge hole in the New Orleans interior offensive line. And the Rams have the guys to exploit that in Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, who have combined for 70 pressures this season. I don't really like the matchup for the Saints tackles either. Trevor Penning and Tallis Fuaga have not been good this year. And the Rams edge defenders, Jared Verse and Byron Young, rank 8th and 11th, respectively, in pass rushing efficiency. So it seems like the Rams are just going to absolutely dominate in the trenches against New Orleans on Sunday.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our DraftKings player of the slate. And who are you putting in your lineup this week?
I'm going to go bargain hunting here. I'm going to take Josh Palmer at 4,300. You know I love him. We talked about him in the summer.
Big
but
Palmer, guys.
I've stayed away. I haven't used him in the DraftKings player of the slate segment yet this year. This is the time. He led the team with 8 targets last week, and I think after what we saw on in that Ravens game, Justin Herbert knows he cannot trust Quentin Johnson. Some absolutely brutal drops there. So I could see Josh Palmer getting even more targets this week. Ladd McConkey's been dealing with injuries, so he hasn't been his full self. And Will Dissly is nursing a groin injury, and he'll be limited anyways by a Falcons defense that's 6th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends. But I think Justin Herbert and the passing offense is still going to have success here, right? The Falcons don't really have a good pass rush, and Herbert is averaging 22% more yards per attempt versus zone than man this year. That's 4th relatively in the NFL, and the Falcons have the 3rd highest zone rate in the league. So all that production has to go somewhere. I think it's Josh Palmer.
I love it. Well, we're due for a Josh Palmer game, but let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got the weather of the week, and what are you seeing out there this week?
Well, I love it for the Browns, right? So it aesthetically beautiful snow game last week, but the scoring conditions were 7 points worse than average according to our metrics. Now they switched to Denver, and it's looking really clean in Denver on Monday night with scoring conditions 2 points better than average. It's a 9-point swing in scoring conditions. That's huge. It's huge. And so we like the over in that game. So let's go ahead and get into it in our primetime preview.
All right, primetime preview. Cleveland versus Denver. You actually released a bet on this one.
Yeah. We're strong opinion over 41.5. And I like it. Both sides of the ball for the matchups for the offenses here. Jameis Winston, he's pushing the ball downfield like we expected, right? He's a 10.6 yard average depth of target since taking over as the starter compared to Deshaun Watson, who had just a 7.1 yard average depth of target. So we're talking 3.5 more yards per air yards per attempt. I mean, Jameis Winston is absolutely slinging it, and part of the downfield aggressiveness is due to Jameis getting better protection than Deshaun Watson was, too, after 4 of the 5 Browns starters on the offensive line were missing in and out of the lineup for the first half of the season. But now Jameis Winston has a 51% clean pocket rate. That's second best in the NFL. So this Browns offensive line is kind of getting back to where we thought they'd be at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and more good news for Jameis. Broncos interior defender Zach Allen, he ranks 5th in pass rushing efficiency, but he was wearing a walking boot on his right foot, and he's nursing that heel injury.
Yeah, and so we don't know if he's going to be playing here on Monday night. Certainly be a boost for the over if he was out entirely, but I don't think he can get a full snap count even if he is in the game. Now, I am a little bit worried about Jermaine Ifedi across from Nick Bonito here. So that's a concern. The Browns are going to have to chip on that side, but John Franklin Myers, if Allen is out, John Franklin Myers is the only one left on that interior, and he's going to be completely shut down by right guard Wyatt Teller, who's 14th in pass blocking efficiency.
All right, so Jameis is going to have time to throw, but where is he going to be looking to get the ball to?
Well, I think he wants to get the ball to Jerry Jeudy in that intermediate range. Jeudy now has 22 receptions on balls thrown between 10 and 19 yards in the air. That leads the entire NFL. But what they're going to have to be creative, right? They can't put Jeudy on the outside here because Pat Surtain would completely shut him down. Pat Surtain's having the best season of any cornerback in the league. So they're going to have to try and move Jeudy into the slot, and Surtain won't follow him in there and get him across from Jaquan McMillan, who is 3rd worst in yards per cover snap allowed among nickelbacks.
All right, well, looking at the Broncos offense, are they going to have an answer for that menace Myles Garrett, who just had 3 sacks last week against Pittsburgh?
They do. I mean, Garrett Bowles having one of the best left tackle seasons in the NFL. He ranks sixth in pass blocking efficiency. I certainly think he's going to be able to battle with Myles Garrett on the outside there. And then I like the matchup for this passing offense because Denver is averaging 26% more yards per pass play against single high safety coverages this season than two high. And the Browns lead the NFL with a 63% single high rate. So Sean Payton and Bo Nix have kind of solved that. They've struggled against two high, but the Browns are not going to give you too high. They don't really tailor their game plan to opposing offenses. So I love the matchup for Bo Nix in this passing offense, especially on the downs that Garrett Bowles can contain Myles Garrett out there.
Yeah, this game feels huge for the Broncos' playoff chances, though.
It is. I mean, our metrics say if they lose, they'd be down to about a coin flip to make the playoffs. Well, if they win, they're across the inflection point up to almost an 80% chance to make the playoffs. So Denver fans should be out and loud on Monday night for this huge, huge game. Our model thinks the Broncos should be favored by, maybe 6.3 here. So not enough to play the side here, but we got the total at 45.6. So we're going to go with a strong opinion on the over.
All right. Well, let's shift it over to our primetime prop. And you are 21-11, dating back to last year. But what do you have for us in this game?
Well, we won our quarterback's rushing yards prop last week on that Herbert. I know you were holding your breath all game and sending me some texts. He finally got it because they kept getting called back. It was crazy.
Like multiple times.
Yeah. But anyways, we're going back to the well with another quarterback rushing over yards prop. Bo Nix over 20.5 rushing yards. The Browns play the fourth most man coverage in the NFL. So that means the defenders are turning their backs to the quarterback a lot. Cleveland has allowed 64 quarterback runs this season, third most in the NFL. So I expect Bo Nix to have 6 carries in this game and pretty easily clear the 20.5 rushing yards prop that we see there.
I love that pick. Well, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And if you're looking for more content, head over to drbobsports.com. And we've also got our college basketball service that is 160, 111, and 1 so far. And there's plenty of basketball season left if you want to get in there. But we'll be back next Friday to preview week 14 of the NFL.